Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. Today we're diving straight into a really magical story. We're talking twinkling stars, an extraordinary little boy, and, well, the hidden secrets of the heart. So let's jump right in and uncover some of these amazing secrets together.
So the whole thing actually kicks off with a drawing, and it shows us something pretty funny about grown-ups. They can have literally zero imagination sometimes. Our narrator drew this incredible picture of a giant boa constrictor that had swallowed a huge elephant whole. But the grown-ups? They just saw a boring old hat. They actually told him to stop drawing altogether, which is wild, right? So he just gave up on art and became an airplane pilot instead.
But as you can probably guess, flying airplanes is pretty risky. Years later, his plane actually breaks down and crashes right in the middle of the Sahara Desert. Just endless, hot sand. He's totally alone out there, and here is the really terrifying part. He only has enough drinking water to last him exactly 1 week. Talk about a serious life or death situation. Then, on his very first morning in the desert, he wakes up to the craziest thing. Out of nowhere, this tiny, funny little voice just says, "If you please, draw me a sheep." He jumps up, rubs his eyes, and there, standing in the middle of absolutely nowhere, is this extraordinary little boy with bright golden hair. Obviously, the pilot tries his best to draw a sheep, right? But this kid keeps rejecting every single one. He's like, no, that one's too sick, or that one's way too old. Finally, the pilot is in a massive hurry to go fix his plane, so he just scribbles a drawing of a box with 3 holes in it. He tells the boy, hey, the sheep you asked for is inside. And guess what? The kid's face just completely lights up. He's absolutely thrilled because he uses his imagination to see the sheep right there inside that little box.
Well, the pilot quickly figures out that this little prince actually comes from a tiny home planet called asteroid B612. Just try to picture that for a second. A whole planet floating out there in the massive universe, and it is literally no bigger than a normal house.
To give you a real idea of just how ridiculously small this place was, if the little prince wanted to watch the sunset, all he had to do was move his chair a few tiny steps. In fact, one day when he was feeling super sad and lonely, he just kept moving his chair and watched the sunset 44 times in a single day. Can you imagine that? But look, even on a microscopic planet, you still have some pretty huge responsibilities. Every single morning, the prince had to do this really important chore. He had to pull up these nasty weeds called baobabs. Because if he let them grow, boom, their huge roots would literally crack his little planet into a million pieces. He wasn't totally alone with his chores, though. One day, this stunningly beautiful rose grew on his planet. And she was gorgeous for sure, but man, she was also super proud and incredibly bossy. The prince took amazing care of her, watering her, giving her a glass cover to block the wind, but she just complained nonstop. He basically felt like he was just too young to know how to properly love her, and it made him really unhappy. So he decides to leave. He sets off across the universe to find a true friend. And wow, what a wild trip it was. He hops around to all these other tiny planets and meets some really strange grown-ups. We're talking about a king who literally just bosses the stars around, a guy who constantly begs for people to clap for him, a businessman who just counts stars all day so he can say he owns them, and a lamplighter who literally never gets to sleep. The prince just shakes his head. He realizes grown-ups are honestly pretty bizarre. So eventually, his journey brings him right here to Earth, landing smack in the desert sand. And the very first thing he runs into is a yellow snake. It's super thin, but obviously very powerful, and it speaks in these really quiet, dangerous riddles. It tells him that anyone it touches gets sent back to the Earth, but it also promises to help the prince get back to his own star whenever he's ready. As he keeps wandering around Earth, though, he hits a really heartbreaking moment. He finds this massive garden bursting with 5,000 roses, and they look exactly like his bossy little rose back home. He just collapses in the grass and cries. I mean, he thought his rose was the only one in the whole universe. Suddenly, he feels like he isn't special at all, just a totally ordinary kid. But right then, this beautiful red fox shows up. The prince immediately wants to play, but the fox says, nope, I can't, I'm not tamed. The prince is like, what does that even mean? And the fox explains that to tame someone just means to make a really unique, special friend. If they tame each other, they'll actually need each other, and they'll become the only ones in the whole world for each other. Well, that sounds great to the prince. He visits the fox every single day, and they become the absolute best of friends. But eventually it's time for the prince to move on. Before he goes, the fox shares this massive, life-changing secret,
Listen to this because it's the real core of the story. It is only with the heart that one can see rightly. What is essential is invisible to the eye.
That secret changes absolutely everything for him. The prince suddenly gets it. Yeah, those 5,000 roses in the garden were pretty, but they meant nothing to him. His rose back home, that is the most important rose in the entire universe, simply because she is his rose. He's the one who watered her, listened to her, and kept her safe. The big takeaway here? You are responsible forever for what you have tamed.
Okay, so back in the desert, the pilot and the prince finally managed to find a well with some cool, fresh drinking water. But they both kind of realized something heavy at the exact same time. It's been exactly 1 year since the prince first landed on Earth. He's missing his rose like crazy, and he knows he has to get back to the stars to protect her.
Now, saying goodbye to a best friend is never easy. The prince tries to comfort the pilot, telling him not to be sad. He gently explains that his physical body is just way too heavy to carry all the way back up into space. He says it's going to look just like an old empty shell, and there's nothing sad about old shells. So with a lot of sadness but so much bravery, he heads back out into the sand to find that powerful yellow snake one last time.
The snake keeps its promise, those dangerous riddles and all, and gently sends him back up to his star. By the very next morning, the pilot actually manages to fix his airplane engine and finally flies home. It's been 6 whole years since that crazy encounter in the desert. And honestly, for the last 6 years, the pilot has spent so many quiet nights just staring up at the vast night sky, missing his extraordinary little friend.
But hey, it is not a totally sad ending. Before he left, the little prince made a promise. He told the pilot he'd be living and laughing up there on one of those stars. And because of that one promise, when the pilot looks up now, the stars don't just sit there silently. They literally sound like 5,000 million little bells all ringing and laughing together in the dark.
So that leaves us with one really big question. The stars are laughing, sure, but what about you? Is the little prince actually happy right now? Did his imaginary sheep end up eating his beautiful rose, or did he manage to protect her under her glass cover? Tonight, I want you to step outside, look up at the stars, and ask yourself that. Just remember the fox's secret, okay? Don't just look with your eyes, look with your heart, because that is the only way to see what really matters. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep looking up.